Hey there, I'm Brandon Howe, and welcome to my Making a Game series. In the last episode, we made the player and boundaries and set up the camera and the background and all of that stuff. So our player can move around using the WASD keys, and they collide with these walls so that they don't go off flying off the edge of the screen. I'm also just going to take this second to make this significantly smaller because it doesn't need to be so big, but that's just small optimization that doesn't really matter. But yeah, I'm also going to make it so that only the player can collide with those boundaries, because when we have enemies, we don't want them bonking off them. So how we're going to do that, actually there's no coding involved for this. We're going to set the tag of the player to player. There's one already there for us, and then we're going to make a separate tag for these boundaries, which we're going to make one called boundary. Boom. And then we have to actually go and then assign the boundary to here, and then now we can go to over in the edit and project settings and physics. If we scroll down, there's this collision matrix, which is a fancy word for saying what layers collide with what. And I messed that up. I set layers when I meant to set, I set tags when I meant to set in layers. So I'm going to make a layer called player and a layer called boundary, or boundaries. Make that singular, yes. So then I'm going to set that to boundary and this to player. That's what I meant to do. I'll leave that tag as player because we'll need to do that later. This boundary I'm pretty sure we don't need, so I'm actually going to get rid of that tag. So oops on my part with that. But now we can go to that collision matrix, and then we can, where player intersects with boundary, we uncheck that. That means anything on the player layer will not collide with anything on the boundary layer. Or wait, sorry, that's not what we want. We'll make a new layer for that is what we want. We don't want boundary colliding with anything else. So where boundary and default collide, we're gonna disable that. That's what we want there. Yeah, that should be fine. So now the player will still collide with the boundary. If we make anything else, it will not collide with the boundary. So it's like enemies and whatnot. Although actually, if we make a new layer called like enemies and then set them to that, then we'll have to deal with that. But we'll deal with that when we get there. Anyway, so that was small improvement stuff. But now in this episode, we're going to be making the player be able to shoot a projectile. And to start with that, we're going to need to make a projectile. So I'm going to go and create a 3D object. I'm going to go with a cylinder. I'm going to go to scene view here. There. Oh, as well, I should mention, at the top of here, there's this aspect ratio thing, which basically sets the dimensions of the screen. I believe when you open a new Unity file, it'll start in this free aspect thing, so as you move the screen, it'll change like that. I went ahead and set it to 16 by 9. That's usually the standard dimensions of a laptop, or of a computer screen. So yeah, but I guess for something like this, you could set it to something that's like thin, or yeah, you can set it to something that's like thin if you want it to be really lanky. But I'm just gonna set it to this to be the size of my screen about. Now I'm gonna set this cylinder, which actually I'm gonna call player shot, or player shot, to, I'm going to zero all those out, and I'm going to go back to the scene view and have a good look at it. And I made a cylinder. I actually wanted to create a capsule. Making all sorts of mistakes today. Oh well. So player shot, and again zeroing that out. I'm also going to hide the player for a minute so we can just worry about making this shot and making it work. So first of all, we're going to want it to face that 90 degrees this way, and then I'm going to color it. I'm just going to make another material. I guess we're going to make this, let's go orange, and then woohoo, good enough for me. Bam. Now we're going to want to make this thin. I'm going to go 0.25 and 0.25. How does that look? Probably maybe 0.6 in length. Oh. Wow. Pew. Yeah, that looks good to me. All right, so now I'm going to add a rigid body to this because we're going to also move it with physics. I'm going to disable gravity again and then have the same constraints as on the player. So now we're going to want to go and actually move this shot. So I'm going to go create C# script shot. I'm just going to leave it generic because I imagine we're going to use the same script for both the player shot and the enemy shot, because this will just deal with movement, and then yeah, we'll have a script for the moving and then a script for colliding, I guess. So actually, I'm going to want to rename this to shot move again. Whoa, didn't mean to do that. And then because we renamed it here, we need the file name to have the same name as the class. Otherwise, it doesn't like it. So we're going to go here and go move. Let that compile. Reopen it. And have at it. Alright, so now we're back in here. So now we're going to do the same thing before where we have a speed variable and a rigid body and then assign it. So I'm actually going to just copy this code and put it in here. They say you're not supposed to copy and paste code, but this is a fine exception. So now we're going to go make this fixed update again. And then a lot of this is kind of the same as before. We're going to go add force. And then the force we're going to add here is going to be, as opposed to vector 3.forward like we did before, we're going to go transform.forward times speed. And what that's going to allow us to do is, if I go back to Unity, if we made it transform.forward, it's going to move that way no matter what. But by making, oh, and actually, this is going along the green axis, that's the y-axis, so I'm going to have to change it to transform.up. But instead of moving, so if we made it vector 3.up, it would always move this way, and then even if it was like turned, it would still go that way. But by making it transform.up, it's this local direction. It's relative to how it's facing. So if it's facing this way, it'll still go that way. And that's how you can make the enemy's bullets still go in the forward direction relative to what way the bullet is facing. So now I'm actually going to go back real quick and then change this to vector 3.up. And that should go flying forward. And it did not. Oh, because I didn't actually assign a script to this. And now for the dragon speed, I'm going to set them to the same values that I set for the player, and we're just going to hope that that works. All right, so now we got a shot being fired, and it looks good to me. So now we want to deal with it actually getting spawned by the player when they shoot. So I'm going to bring back the player and go to the shot. Now, for what I'm going to do, I need these to be facing the same way rotation-wise. This has a 90-degree turn. This does not. Now, how I'm going to deal with that is I'm going to actually make an empty game object. I'm going to also call it player shot. And I'm going to zero up both of these, which if I actually, yeah, 0, 0, 0, and I missed that one. Cool. And then I'm going to make this one a child object of this one. I got it backwards. This one, a child object of that one. And then, so now this has the same rotation as the player as well. Yeah. So then that should, so they have the same rotation now. So now we can do the thing that I'm going to do with them. So now we're going to make a new script called player shoot. And this is how we're going to fire our shot. So now, waiting a second, opening it. So now how we're going to shoot this is we're going to need a reference to the object in order to spawn it. So how we're going to do that, oh, accidentally deleted my prefab folder before. So prefabs, in here, we're going to make this player shot something called a prefab. I'm also going to do it with the player, which doing it to the player isn't as important now, but we need to do it to the player shot right now, and I'm about to show you why. By making it a prefab, it's basically saving the object data so that some uses of doing this would be if you needed to have multiple of the same object, you could have, so I had lots of player shots in the scene, and then I wanted these all to have the same values. I can go and then, because it's a prefab, I can change something with one of them and then apply it, and then it'll change the values of all the other prefabs, which is pretty handy. You can also then easily like open a new scene and then just drag these in, and it makes it nice to work with. So, but by making this a prefab, another thing we can do, I'm actually going to delete this version in the scene, so we just have this prefab. I can go public game object shot, and then we can actually then spawn or have this be a reference to the prefab, and then we can spawn it in. So we're also going to need a float for how long we want time-wise in between when you can shoot. So I'm going to call that shot time, so that you can't just fire an endless stream of shots. There's like a small delay between when you can shoot. Yeah, we're also going to, using this shot time, we're going to have a private boolean. It's called can shoot. And then that's going to determine whether or not we can shoot at any given time. And I'm going to start it off equaling true. And then I'm going to go down to update here. And then, so we're going to say if input dot get key, I'll go get key down, key code dot space, then, or and, so if they press the space key, and, and the difference between get key and get key down, get key will be true as long as they're holding down the button. Get key down will be true like the frame that they press the button. So the first time they press it, yeah. There's also get key up, which is when they release the button. So that's what those do. There's also different things where you can get like mouse buttons and whatnot. And then you can also get like the messes, if this an X and Y value that has to do with if it's like moving up or down, and then you can do stuff with that. So if they press the space key and can shoot is true, then we're gonna want to we're gonna want to spawn the bullet, and how we do that is instantiate the shot, and then we have to say where we want to spawn it, and then that's gonna be the player's position. And then the rotation, this is why I needed the rotations to be the same, so I can just go transform.rotation, so it'll have the same rotation as the player that it's spawning from, and then good old semicolon, and that will spawn the bullet. And then now we need to set the delay between being able to fire it again. How we're going to do this is we're going to be creating something called a coroutine, which is basically a function where you can have delays, and we're going to use a delay to set this variable between true and false. So IEnumerator, so what you have to type for that, we're going to call it wait to shoot. All right. Yeah. And then we're going to go can shoot equals false. And then to do this delay thing, it's yield return new wait 4 seconds shot time. Bam. There's also other types of delays, but this is the one that we'll be using. And then can shoot equals true. And then now to call it here, you don't just type the function name as you would calling other methods like instantiate. You have to go start coroutine, and then you put the function, and it goes like that. So that this has an error. Oh, sorry, wait to shoot. Yeah, wait to shoot that's, yeah. And then that should be that. So going back to Unity, letting things compile. I'm also saving like every other second. I just kind of have that down as habit. It's important to save your work often so you don't lose it if things crash, or if you're on a desktop and just there's a power outage or something. I've lost lots of work through things dying, so it's important to save. So it doesn't happen to you. Public servants announcement. So now we're going to go to the player. We're going down to scripts, and we're going to go player shoot. And add it to there. And then the shot time, let's make it 0.2 seconds. And then going down to prefabs and then dragging the player shot to there. Shazam. This is also an example of what I was talking about before, about making things modular. Instead of just having one script called player and then having all of this, we have lots of scripts that have like one task. So we have player move and player shoot, and then we're going to have probably like a player health and all that stuff. And this allows, well, it allows things to be more organized and clear as opposed to us having one monstrous, gigantic script. And I actually just realized I should probably zoom in on this more so you can see code better. Sorry about that. So you have these individual code files that all do different things, and it makes things clearer and more organized as well. You can then, if you go about it the right way, you can then combine these code files in different ways to achieve different functionality. And then you could also easily disable things on the fly. So if I wanted to disable the player's ability to shoot, I can just disable that script and bam, they can't shoot no more. Now, usually with the player, there's not necessarily a lot of reusability, but with things like shots and whatnot, or not shots, like anything that's not the player, like projectiles and enemies and whatnot, that tends to be where you get more bang for your buck for making reusable scripts, and then you're able to mix and match them. So, for example, what I was talking about before over here, about having different enemy types, we can make an enemy move script, an enemy health, or whatever we need for a base enemy that flies straight. And then we can make like an enemy turn script of some kind, and then an enemy shoot script. And by having those be separate scripts, we can then make the enemy that turns and shoots by just putting both scripts on that enemy. And it should just work, hopefully, if you do it right. Yeah. Shazam. So now, with that all handled with, I should be able to hit play and fire away. So actually, I'm also going to turn off gizmos there. Hitting space. Okay, so it's spawning inside the player, so it's kind of pushing the player a bit. But other than that, it's working, and the spawn time is nice. Although I think I might maybe give it some kind of initial speed. I might actually, instead of using the add force with drag, I might make it move forward at a constant speed, because that just might be better. So, first of all, though, I'm going to make it so it doesn't intersect with the player, which is just an easy fix. So we're going to open the prefab here, which goes into like its own little scene so that you can edit it on its own, which is pretty nice and handy dandy. And then we're just going to set this to be a trigger, and that's it. So now as well, if I'm going to be setting it to a constant speed, I'm not going to need this drag, so I'm just going to set that to 0, back to its default value, and then I'm going to go back over here. This is another case of changing things on the fly. I initially did this with .add force, but now I'm going to do it a different way to have constant speed, just because I think that might be better. So instead, not in fixed update, but in the start function, we're going to just go rigid body dot velocity, and we're going to set that to transform dot up times speed, and that'll be it. And then we won't even need this, and then I can set that back to that because we're not using it. I'll probably just delete the function in a moment, but I want to make sure this works first. And then because of that speed variable, we're also going to want to put that a lot further down over here. I'm going to put that to like 3. Let's try that out. So now when we go into play mode, that is really slow. I'm going to go out, so that there's this maximize on play button when you go pause and unpause. That's how you can do that. Now I'm going to go and open this prefab and just change these variables. When you change prefabs while in play mode, they don't get undone when you go out of play mode. So that can be good or bad depending on what you want to do. So I'm just going to set that higher and higher. See, yeah, that's way too fast. Pew pew. I want it to go pretty fast. And I might also... Yeah, okay, that's more of what I want. So I'll do that, but then I think I'm also going to go and decrease the players. Oh, whoa. I'm going to decrease or increase players' shot time. You could also perhaps maybe have like a shop upgrade system where they can like upgrade, having like the shot time be lower and making the shots faster and bigger and all that sort of stuff. There's always ways you can, like, I don't know, increase the functionality of your game. But you also want to be careful about how much stuff you want to add, because then you can get pretty bloated pretty quickly, and you want to make sure that you're not having too many features and that it's hindering the game itself. So now... Yeah, alright, so now we have a shot fully functional, and it moves, it spawns where the player is. If we were to actually go then and rotate the player, not like that, along the y-axis, it actually then shoots relative to the forward direction of the player, which is nice. But you might also notice that over here on the side, this is getting filled up pretty quickly with lots of these shot clones, and then there's also going to be a lot of them. And when we have player shooting and enemy shooting, there's going to be a lot of objects that are just flying off into infinity over there. So we're going to want to handle that. So how we're going to do that? First of all, the fancy organization up here, I'm going to make an empty game object called shots, and it's going to deal with all of that. I'm going to zero that out for organization. And then we're going to go to the to player shoot, and then we're going to go and set up a public. Actually, I'm going to make it a private for simplicity. A private transform, and then that's going to be shot parent, and that's going to be that game object that we just created where we're going to store stuff. Let's store the objects that the shots that get spawned for organization. Then we're going to set shot parent equals game object dot find, getting the name right, shots, and then going dot transform. I'm making it the transform because we only need reference to the transform for how we're going to make it spawn as a child under that. And then basically then instantiate shot, transform dot position, transform dot rotation. Another thing that we can have is then the parent, which we're then just going to set to shot parent. Ta-da! So then, going back here, waiting a second, because we get the reference through just the start function through the private thing, I don't need to set that up manually, so I can just do this, and then bam, organized. Yeah. So now we want to make it so that the shots don't last forever, and how we're going to do that is we're going to make another script that's just going to be called destroy by time. And then we can also then put this on our enemies when we create them later if they just fly past and then they're gone, or like hazards and all that. We're basically then opening this. The name is exactly how it sounds. So we're going to set a public float called lifetime, and that's going to be how long till it gets destroyed. And I'm going to set this has a default value of 2, no 5, just because. And then we're in the start function, we're going to call the destroy function. We're going to destroy this game object. It has to be with a lowercase g, because lowercase g is referring to this game object as a variable. Capital G refers to like it as a component that you can then call functions with. Like over here when we had GameObject.find. This is referring to the type of object component thing like there with a capital T for transform. This is referring to the GameObject variable that is whatever this object is attached to. So we're storing this GameObject and then lifetime. That's how long in seconds it'll be till the GameObject is destroyed. And it's as simple as that. I'm actually also just going to clean some of this code up a bit. Just removing things that we didn't use to be organized. Yeah. All right, back here. Now we're going to want to go to our shot. And finally, add this. We're going to want to add... Oh, not that. Whoa. We're going to want to add destroy by time to the parent object so that it gets destroyed as well. So we don't just have a bunch of empty game objects. That would only half solve our problem. So now going into play mode, I think 5 seconds should be fine. So now we see these objects and we see they slowly start to disappear. I just want to get an eye on how far they're making it. 5 seconds might be a lot. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter that much unless we have like hundreds and hundreds of bullets. It really shouldn't be a problem, but I'll lower it to 3 and I'm going to call it a day there. Probably I could lower it to like 2 seconds, but whatever, just being safe that we don't have the shots just disappearing as they go off the screen. So yeah, all right, so now the player can shoot. And we dealt with the organization of the bullets in terms of them getting destroyed after they're off screen and they don't matter anymore. And, yeah, being organized by having this shot thing. So I'm going to say that that's it for this episode. In the next episode, I think we might... Okay, the next episode we'll work on making hazards that then come flying towards the player. And for now, we'll just make it when they hit the player dies immediately, and then it restarts the level. Eventually, we might make health or something like that. We'll see. All right, so thank you all so much for watching, and have a good day. There, that's my outro, I guess.